Our guest tonight on AOH Primetime, Jeremy Lile, Chief of Leadership and Learning at the United Way of Summit and Medina, with an in-depth discussion on the Center for Immersive Leadership. Thank you for being with us as we begin the interview here. Let's talk right out of the gate.
All right.
About your title. And the fun thing about asking about a title is most people's job responsibilities far exceed what their title tries to explain. So explain what the Center for Immersive Leadership is and what your role is.
Yeah. So I'm technically the Chief of Leadership and Learning for United Way of Summit and Medina, and the Center for Immersive Leadership is a new initiative under that banner. So responsibilities organization-wide to just look at, both internally, where are the opportunities to develop and support our leadership, and that's at every level. We see everybody as leadership potential, and then also out in the wider community, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, but more about the merger of Heart to Heart and United Way to start the Center for Immersive Leadership, but really with the vision of a need in our community for continued leadership development, engagement, folks who see the opportunities that they have and developing that pipeline, but then also that with leadership comes a responsibility to give back in some way. And that starts to others within your organization, but then also in the wider community. I think it's one of the beautiful things about our community is that sense of it. If I've been given something, if I've been blessed with an opportunity, I also want to give back and support others. And so I think it's really trying to ensure that as some of those kind of legends in our community retire or unfortunately pass away, but who I think really fostered that spirit, how do we continue that spirit? And so with this merger, opportunities to engage folks at those levels. We kind of talk about a cycle that United Way had of volunteer, advocate, give, and now we're adding lead to that as well. So it's not a one-time thing that you do, but if we can view life in kind of cycles, I should be engaged in those kinds of ways. Be willing to volunteer, get my hands dirty. We were just had a day of action last week where we were out, moving mulch and trimming hedges and all that, painting walls, and then, also to give of our financial resources, but then, lead with our voice, with our actions as well. So hope that answers.
Yes. Explain the nuts and bolts of the Center for Immersive Leadership. When you come into an organization, into a business, into a company, and you're the leadership of that organization has brought your team in, what is it that they're doing?
Great question. So first of all, we offer several different modalities. So we have community programs that either people can just register for, or right now we're recruiting for our flagship program, Purposeful Leadership, which is 6 full-day sessions, plus you get a 360 assessment and 6 hours of one-on-one coaching. But that's actually an application process. So that's really for kind of senior level leaders, and kind of a culmination of the best of what we offer. But then we also do offer some community workshops, things like that. But then to your question, the bulk of our work is within organizations, and it's anything from just how do we enhance our leadership pipeline and develop that next level of leaders for the organization to help them upskill and be ready to take on more responsibility. One of the things we've seen over the past 5 years, especially with kind of the quiet quitting and all the effects of the pandemic, lots of voids in organizations, people leaving and pursuing fully remote jobs and things like that. And so one of the things we hear is, I got put in this position with no training. It was just, hey, you're last person standing. Good luck kind of thing. And so how do we develop those folks? Also helping teams to get in alignment and just in general across the board. So sometimes we'll work with a small subset of the leadership team or the entire leadership team. And sometimes we'll work with the entire organization. We've done seminars for 500 teachers in different public schools. And so really we can kind of cross the spectrum. But our tagline is look within, lead beyond. So it's always going to be with, first of all, better understanding ourselves, our unique strengths, our sense of purpose and values. How do we bring that out into the workplace? And if you've been around me at all, one of my things that I really beat the drum on is even just change that language around what I think has traditionally been known as soft skills. And when we hear that, certain things come to our mind, right? Oh, soft, they're squishy, they're kind of disposable, they're, give me the hard facts, but really to flip the language on that of these are foundational and essential skills that if we don't have these, the shadow of our leadership is going to be a long, cast a long shadow, and the ripple effects of that can be really detrimental. So again, how do we better understand ourselves so we can lead ourselves, lead others, lead in organizations, and lead in the wider community?
Are you allowed to take a position on remote work? And this is a hot button topic in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And not on my list of questions, but you prompted me to ask, is there research? If there's anyone that would understand the workplace and the effect of remote learning, or the idea that all of us being together in a workplace is better for camaraderie and team building and all that, are you allowed to take a position? And if so, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm certainly allowed to, but it's difficult to take a hard position because I think it does so much depend on the workflows and the type of work that you're doing. There's certain places where, and this is one of the things that some places we think this just happened in the last 5 years. Some places this has been happening for decades where they've been mostly remote and everything. So, there's places that have kind of learned how to do this and make it work. What I will say is I think there are certain things in a majority of types of work that when you don't have that human connection, I think one of the things that we have found is just the collaboration. It's easy for me to kind of just get into my zone, get into my workflows, which can be great, but all those water cooler conversations, I don't know if anybody has water coolers anymore, but, just those things where you walk down a few feet to someone else's office or cubicle and, hey, real quick, I had this idea. And so I think sometimes just the inefficiency of email and all those back and forths, or even just, I don't have a problem walking down the hall to maybe say, hey, real quick, but, do I really need to call this person or, message them on Teams or something? So again, it's hard to take a position, but I do think each organization should look deeply into what are the benefits, what are some of the potential hang-ups, and are there kind of more hybrid options that we can offer? But I know there's one organization we were talking to that's in the software space, and they said, we can't compete from a talent standpoint if we require people to be in the office. So again, you got to know your industry, know the certain opportunities and challenges that it may face. But I would just say, regardless, there's good research to support both sides of things, really to take a deep look in your organization and say, what's going to work best for us at United Way? We offer every other week remote Fridays, so we kind of bake it into the normal rhythm, plus a very generous remote work policy. So there's flexibility. I think that would probably be the main thing, and then I'll let us move on. But the other thing I would say about it is, I do think one of the things we found is just some of the rigidity that we had placed around the work hours, the work day. And again, yes, there are places where you need people on site or available at certain times and hours. But, many of us have found that, hey, I need to run the kids to this appointment, or, I want to exercise in the morning and come in a little bit later this day or something. Some of those flexibilities, I think, have been a really good lesson learned from hybrid or moving to more remote, or just allowing for more remote work.
For those familiar with Heart to Heart and the Center for Immersive Leadership, certainly there's been a transition in the last year or two, I suppose maybe 2 years ago now, where Heart to Heart became under the umbrella of United Way. Yeah. And give us a sense of what that journey was, what that transition was, maybe even the behind the scenes. How did that come to be? And Heart to Heart probably 28 or 30 years in, with a 30-year history of serving the community, serving Akron's business leaders and organizations. Yeah. How did this go?
Yeah. So, first of all, we'll be at 1 year on July 1. So we're coming right up on 1 year. So this is a great time to kind of pause and reflect on that journey. Yes, 36 years, I think. In 1987 was the first time our co-founders of Heart to Heart, Father Norm Douglas and Larry Villeman, kind of met each other and started to have conversations, incorporated officially in 1990. So, so 30, I guess that would have been 34 years of existence as Heart to Heart. And really what this was about, kind of that behind the scenes conversation, is we had just finished a 3-year strategic plan for Heart to Heart. We'd been on a growth trajectory ever since, kind of my taking over leadership, as far as, and sometimes in our work, it's hard to measure, how much did you grow in your leadership development? So we do measure things like revenue growth, number of people impacted, number of programs offered, just to say, hey, are we continuing to expand and have the impact that we want? So, we had been doing that year over year. We're kind of anticipating what we really envisioned as exponential growth, and how do we do that by addition or multiplication, and who are we already partnered with? Where might it make sense for us to, collaborate more deeply? So started some conversations with some folks in the community. United Way, we were already in their building. They already were our biggest supporter. We were doing a lot of work for them internally, just knew about the incredible mission and kind of the transformation they had gone through, to establish the bold goals with the rest of the community, to move to more of a direct service model, to support, and fill gaps in the community. And I think for us, it was about, okay, we can add incrementally and hire a part-time marketing person and a part-time fund development person and, this, that, and the other. Or what if we link up with an organization that already has these things, that sees the value add that we bring, and voila, you add water and we have a fund development team, we have a marketing team, and all these things. So, that was a part of that, with the broader vision of how does this really better support the community? How could our alignment of mission and work help create more opportunities to develop even more leaders in the community? And again, that's leaders at every level, because we've done work at the neighborhood level, we've done work with teenagers, middle schoolers, all the way up to retirement and beyond, really. So that was kind of the vision behind it. As with any merger, there's challenges and there's opportunities. And so I think really over this past year, I'm kind of a act first, plan later type of person. Like, let's just get going. I don't do well trying to be patient. So our new president and CEO, Annie McFadden's been really good at saying, Jeremy, trust the process. Don't. I know you're eager to move forward, but we got to learn each other. We have to learn the cadence and rhythms of how things work within our organizations. And, I think part of the challenge has been helping the community really understand the reason behind this, the rationale, and what's available to them, how they benefit from us coming together, and the additional resources that we can offer, again, across the spectrum. So that's been kind of the vision behind it, a little bit of the process, and I'm really excited as we kind of hit this 1-year mark. I feel like that alignment is in place. And if you've been paying any attention in the community, United Way and every nonprofit, and I would say probably most for-profits, are just feeling the pain right now too, where we've all had our own challenges that we've been facing, in recent months and years, as well as societal changes, funding changes are taking place. January with executive orders coming out. What exactly do these mean for us? And I think just economically in general, businesses and individuals are kind of in a bit of a wait and see mode. And so therefore maybe not as eager to jump into additional programming, additional funding, those kinds of things. So, we're navigating all those things, but, the thing I always have to come back to when it comes to purpose and root myself and ground myself in is it's about the people. We have just an amazing, we went from a team of about 4 or 5 core staff and 4 or 5 subcontracted facilitators to now 80 plus, coworkers, and just beautiful people showing up each and every day to fill those gaps in our community, to support people, to really help them, pursue a life of flourishing.
When we come back, Jeremy Lile tells the story of connecting with Father Norm Douglas and Larry Volleman and taking the leadership role at Heart to Heart Communications. Now back to our in-depth discussion with Jeremy Lile, Chief of Leadership and Learning at the United Way of Summit and Medina. You've been in a leadership role for Heart to Heart now, Center for Immersive Leadership, for a decade.
Just about, yeah.
What was it like to step in, to be recruited by Father Norm and Larry Villeman? And what was the initial meeting? I would be sweating in that job interview. I adore them. I respect them so much. But to be sitting across the desk in an evaluation sort of, you're in the hot seat in a way. How did you connect with them? How did that develop? And then how did it feel to realize you're the one that's going to take over?
Yeah. So it was an interesting providential process. I think I can use that language of how I came into that. So first of all, you started to use that language of fill. Certainly big shoes to fill. I always say Father Norm and Larry are kind of like the Kevin Bacons of Akron. Like, there's 1 degree of separation between them and just about everybody. Dynamic people, hearts of gold, wanting to serve in so many different ways. So I fortunately did have a trial period where they got to kind of kick the tires on me and see if there was that alignment and kind of that vision for carrying things forward. Spent the first 10 years of my career in full-time work in a church, got ordained, and was kind of in that career, but also had grown up in a family of entrepreneurs, a family business that was literally started out of our basement in North Akron. And so always just kind of had this impetus toward getting outside those 4 walls. And so I'd become part of a national organization called Made to Flourish that was really focusing on what they called faith, work, and economic wisdom. Kind of their tagline was closing the Sunday to Monday gap. How do we help us take our core beliefs, our values, our sense of purpose and meaning, and take it into our everyday work life. And work can mean what we get paid for, but also just, being home, raising children, being home, taking care of pets and all those things, the activity of our hands, if you will. And so was involved in that. And actually it was Kyle Kudachief. He wasn't with the Knight Foundation at the time, but we were doing some neighborhood development work in our community in West Akron where we lived. And we're showing some folks around the neighborhood a community garden we had started, different things. And Kyle said, hey, I'm part of this conversation that I think you'd really enjoy. Sure enough, Father Norm and Larry had brought together a group of some emerging leaders in the community just to say, hey, what is this conversation that Heart to Heart has been having about the inner life and our outer work mean to the next generation? And so went to that first meeting, and it was one of those moments in life where I felt like my heart was just going to jump out of my chest. Like, I want to be part of this, whatever it takes, just let me know. So I started volunteering, helped set up a retreat for emerging leaders for us to kind of talk about what does our inner life have to do with our outer work. And from there, they brought me on to consult 1 day a week at Heart to Heart. And turns out that they were kind of in the conversation of what might a succession plan look like, and understanding that Father Norm will be called back probably to be a full-time father. Well, he's always a full-time father, a full-time pastor, at some point, and the bishop had even indicated sometime soon. So, in the next couple of years. So, was just kind of getting involved and engaged. And lo and behold, Father Norm gets a call from the bishop on a Friday, right before Holy Week. I think this was back in 2016. And the bishop said, hey, we've got a parish for you. It's here in Akron. Good news. And Father Norm's question was, well, when do I start? Well, how's Monday look for you? So obviously there was grace in kind of a transition period. So I stepped into the role of director of operations, kind of an interim role for about 9 months, because again, big shoes to fill. And I think there were a lot of questions about, can this organization and how will this organization transition from, and I think this is the case in a lot of businesses and a lot of nonprofits. Usually you've got that founder that has, or founders who have that passion, who have that drive, who have that story. And then you really have to take it and kind of transition it into bigger, vision for what is it that we offer? What are the things that we can bring out into the world that are beyond just, the founder's vision? I have to say, if there's an example of that transition in our community, I think Father Norm and Larry nailed it. They immediately, very quickly, I should say, took a posture of, Jeremy, we want to be your biggest supporters. Larry, former football player, said, I'm going to be your blocker. I want to get out there and help create space for you to move forward. And so just incredibly gracious with that transition, trusting vision along the way to say, hey, here's where we think there's opportunities to really standardize a lot of the things that you've done and grow and expand this mission. There may be some things, and there were things that we had to kind of pivot away from. But again, they were there kind of giving their blessing and support all along. And then even as recently as this transition from taking this beloved organization Heart to Heart and merging with United Way. And, we're still using a lot of Heart to Heart language, but it's not the logo. It's not the name that's on the sign and out front there. And for them to say, Jeremy, we see this bigger vision, for the community. And I think that's always been their heart. We've been able to carry that legacy and that passion and that vision, regardless of what the name is. What's the work that's most important that we carry on. And so, so just, and then from there, getting to know some community leaders who, again, and I think this is one of the beautiful things about Akron is we wrap ourselves around people and places and projects. If we see a good vision, whether that's in the for-profit or nonprofit space, you can get access to people who will lend support, who will offer their expertise. I mean, you and your organization are a great example of that, supporting Heart to Heart over the years with, filming the annual breakfast and doing videos for that. So just was really blessed to have a lot of people kind of take me under their wing and be willing to guide me in different ways. And I'll talk maybe about some of those folks in a little bit here. But
speaking of the breakfast, this is an event that anyone who's in a leadership position or involved in an organization that serves Akron, it's a must attend event, and it has continued through the transition.
Yes.
And the 30-year history there. I don't know if they did
32nd year.
32nd year of breakfast.
Yeah.
This must go on. And this is what is it about that event that really is a draw?
I think there's two things. Well, there's a lot of things,
sure,
but two that really stand out. I think one is the speakers. We try to find people who are willing to let you look behind the curtain a little bit and see the human behind the leader. I think oftentimes we want leaders to project a certain persona or image, or we just ask the questions about your successes or the things that are maybe more apparent or available just even from reading the person's bio or something. And so we say, hey, we want you to dig behind that a little bit, open up and be personal. So I think people really appreciate the opportunity to get to know some of these key community leaders on a more personal level. And they're just have been outstanding year over year, amazing people. And then I think the second part is that it's about the speaker, but it's not. It really is about the community. And so we have resisted the push from and encouragement from some people to, you need to give out awards, you need to recognize certain people. And really what we want to make it about is the community coming together and our potential in keeping kind of what I would call, purpose-driven, values-based, community-minded leadership at the forefront. And so we're coming together around a common purpose and goal. And just the energy is always good because I think people come in with that expectation. They bring their own anticipation and excitement about the event. And so, and it really was through that year of transition. That was one of the big questions is, will people continue to support this in the same way under a new banner? Through a year where, maybe it hasn't always been as clear as where did Heart to Heart go and what is still going on and why this merger. And so to see us hit, around that 500 people mark yet again this year and a great energy in the room. We always try to end with a great closing. And I feel like we did that again this year with Ace Epps and his spoken word. So, I think those are two things that really stand out to me of just, it has a little different feel than a lot of other events where maybe the focus is on a person and their legacy. And I'm not knocking that in any way, but again, we just know our space in that is, we want to feature a speaker or speakers, but we want to, really make this about all of us and what we can accomplish together.
It really gives a sense of the community coming together with so many community leaders in the same room and everybody coming together. Always a great event. And of course, Father Norm and Larry, to see them and, for them to be there and to see them both in the same place.
And Larry's word of the day.
The word of the day, of course.
Short, right?
Yeah. Back in the day, they would always say they're coming into a company, and there would people to say, well, they're bringing in a priest and a lawyer to lead this. So what is this all about? And how do you address that when somebody says, well, we don't have a space in our company for somebody coming in to preach to us.
Yeah.
But to the magic, the balance to incorporate your faith, life and beliefs and those core values you have here in with the business world.
Yeah.
Where sometimes it's not appropriate or some people feel it's not appropriate.
Right.
That balance. And they did it so well. And I know you carry on that tradition and that legacy, but describe for somebody how that is, especially when you have somebody that objects to it.
Yeah.
With the idea, well, this is a faith-based organization or what is this? How do you overcome that objection on that aspect?
Yeah. So yes, and I always say when people ask about, tell me about Heart to Heart, how it started. I'm like, well, sounds like the start of a good joke. A priest and a lawyer walk into a business, and so yes, they I think walked that line finally, and because it's authentic to them, it's not this thing that was kind of bolted on, and hey, maybe this is a way to get into businesses and bring this message. Just it's the way that both of them have lived, integrating their beliefs, their spirituality, their faith into their everyday lives. And I think Father Norm, from a parish standpoint, encouraging folks to do that. Larry, the lawyer, again, having his own kind of reawakening, if you will, when he suffered a stroke in the courtroom, and then just had this real strong sense of it's not what I'm doing, it's why and how. And I think that's the key there is, any profession, or the vast majority of professions have that potential for making an impact and difference in people's lives. And so we adopted some language around, especially when we were Heart to Heart, the founding documents. We are faith-based, but we're not faith-biased. Now, as a Center for Immersive Leadership, we wanted to make sure we codified United Way is not a faith-based organization, but that we do, as a Center for Immersive Leadership, and just in general, acknowledge that there is a spiritual dimension to who we are, to the work that we do. And I will say, I think I'm fortunate that probably early 2000s, I was coming up in seminary and things like that. I think there was a little bit more of a aggressive hostility toward, keep these things entirely separate. I think as folks begin to look at research from Harvard Business Review, Forbes, McKinsey, that says, hey, if we're asking people to put what drives and motivates them to the side, to put their sense of purpose and their core beliefs to the side, we're losing a lot of good energy there. And there's a great research study done by the Energy Project, Harvard Business Review, and the Energy Project that kind of talks about the new leader needs to be the CEO, the Chief Energy Officer. And so again, I think helping people to see we're not coming in to proselytize, to try and convert you to a particular faith tradition or set of beliefs. We're trying to convert you to the understanding that what is within you, the core motivations, are not something that you should set aside. They're going to inform the work that you do. And then if you can align those with the purpose of your organization, and I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but one that stands out, I think it's like people are 177% more engaged in their work if there's that purpose alignment. Better Help has even done so, or Better Up has done some studies that even show, and I can't remember again the exact percentages, folks can look this up, but it's a very high percentage of people who say, I would take a little less pay for a greater sense of purpose and meaning in my work. So, really coming at it from that angle, and that's not in some, sideways angle. That's an authentic angle to say, I really believe at my core that if we can help people, we spend on average 112,000 hours of our lifetime at work. So, that's always a pause point for people to think about, where am I at in that? But if we're going to spend that much time there, why not let it be something that fuels us, that actually helps multiply energy, so that then when we go back into the rest of our lives, our families, our communities, we have that energy to give. And I think that's part of what we've seen over these past few years is just as global events, as the pandemic and just other things drain us, then we get home and it's like, I just want to shut off and I want to check out. I don't want to be tapped into any of these things. And so, again, I think that multiplication effect, the impact of that is substantial, because then it really creates a situation where it uplifts and provides opportunities, equitable opportunities for more and more people to flourish and to thrive in their lives.
When we come back, more with Jeremy Lile, Chief of Leadership and Learning at the United Way of Summit and Medina. Now back to our in-depth discussion with Jeremy Lile, Chief of Leadership and Learning at the United Way of Summit and Medina. As we wrap up, give us a sense of who inspired you as a young person, or can you remember what age you were the first time you had a mentor or somebody that you admired and said, I want to do this with my life? Perhaps there aren't a lot of people who at age 16, 18, 20 choose to be a spiritual leader or, choose the career path that you chose.
Yeah.
So what inspired you, or who inspired you?
Yeah. And first of all, I'd say that career path has kind of chosen me, because there's no direct, sometimes I will meet with people and say, how can I do what you did? How'd you get in? I'm like, there is no direct path for this. It's very crooked and kind of all over the place. But, two people quickly come to mind. First of all is my father. So I mentioned an entrepreneur, started a business, and just seeing him, he unfortunately passed away at the age of 49. I had an opportunity among 16, I think, other people to eulogize him. That's just the kind of person he was. People want to honor him. But, I use the word seamless for just the way he lived his life, and even the way he transitioned out of, the here and now, if you will, toward the life to come. But, that it wasn't this, I'm going to be John, the showy business person over here, and then I'm going to be John, the jerk, or the deceptive person over here. It really was, it was congruent. It was seamless. There was an integrity to it. And so I saw him run his business based on those values and treat his employees, treat those that they served with fairness. And I remember him saying things like, Jeremy, people say I should get a bigger house, I should get more stuff, and I'm satisfied. I have a good life. I have a lot of good things in my life. And also, we tell our clients, we might not always be the fastest, we might not always be the cheapest, but we're going to follow through. So if something goes wrong, we'll make it right. So just having that example day in, day out. Later in his career, he even started to take some of those principles around the world and do some work in Ukraine and help start a micro enterprise business there. And so just also seeing how he was always willing to give back and say, hey, again, all is grace, all is gift. I've been blessed with these things. I want to be a blessing to others and help give back. And then another one was just a teacher in high school. And I guess this comes to mind because in some ways it seems so insignificant, but he was one of the first people to just say, Jeremy, I see some potential in you. I think you could lead at a higher level, and you're not really tapping into that potential. And that was right around sophomore year of high school. I was very much just kind of letting life happen to me. And just through that encouragement and him seeing something in me that I couldn't see, didn't see at the time, it really motivated me to get more engaged and involved. And so, I ended up getting involved in student government and stepping into leadership roles more and more, just because of some of that encouragement. So I guess that one comes to mind just because I think sometimes we think our actions maybe aren't making an impact, and even just those small things for him to see that in me and to call that out really inspired me to pursue some higher levels of leadership. So shout out to Mr. Komarniski is his name.
At Cuyahoga Valley Christian Path.
Yeah, it's
there it
CCA.
is. All right. Let's end with, you touched on this briefly when people approach you and say, well, how did your career, how did you get into all this? And then along the way, those are probably people that want your advice.
Yes.
And how do you answer when somebody says, what do you think I should do? Or what advice do you give to the next generation coming up, young people that aspire to do what you're doing, or be involved in some way?
Yeah.
What advice do you give them?
First of all, I always say, if you want to get into this line of work, be ready to not know where your next meal's coming from, because, you got to constantly be drumming up the business, everything. I'm like, it looks glamorous on the outside. Yeah, we're facilitating and we're holding these sessions and getting to do public speaking events and stuff. But, there's a lot of grind that happens behind the scenes. Sure. and all that. But after I scare them a little bit, then I tell them, really take some time to understand your purpose, understand those values. They're going to be kind of your guiding principles that create some guardrails for you to say, I'm not going to deviate from these. And then take some time to really understand yourself and your strengths. What are the things that I uniquely bring into the world? And even, who are those Mr. Komarniskis in your life that have identified certain passions and abilities that you offer? And then understand that it doesn't have to be limited to one field. I think if we can discover that sense of passion, it can express itself in a variety of different ways, but we just have to find creative ways to connect that mission. I remember early on when I started, we were working with a painting company, and I was talking to the owner of the painting company, and I said, why do you do these, we were doing Clifton Strengths at the time. Well, why do you do that for your employees? They're, probably not going to be here very long. They're not, they're probably not that invested in the company. And he said, Jeremy, I went into one of my employees' apartments one time, and the only thing they had on the wall was the certificate from completing this program. And he said, that to me showed me that if I can tap into that place of passion, I'm going to get the best out of them showing up each and every day. So I think it's not about following someone else's path. It's about really understanding yourself and how do you authentically express that in the world. And then I think you really could do a variety of different jobs. And I've done that, and find a sense of meaning and purpose in those things.
What does retirement look like?
A long ways off.
A long ways off. There you go.
Yeah,
we will both be doing what we love in our retirement. Yes. Because we love what we're doing now.
And that's, again, going back to my dad, that was always his advice to me was, Jeremy, if you can find something you love and find a way to get paid to do it, you won't work a day in your life, and you'll be really blessed. And that's a good life. So I agree. I think I'll always have that heart to give back. It may look different 30 years from now or something in retirement, whenever that may be. But yeah, I just have that strong sense of I've been gifted with a lot of blessings in my life and opportunity that not everybody has. And so I want to pay that forward, pay it back, and help create opportunities for others to, pursue their passions and their dreams as well.
Thank you for taking the time to come on here and share a little bit. I'm sure we could probably go another hour, and I probably could come up with the questions, but I really appreciate your time and being on this. And we appreciate you watching here at AOH Primetime, and we will be back with the wrap up right after this. Stay with us. For more information about our guest tonight on AOH Primetime, visit WAOH.tv.